So, hi, how are you doing, Ramco?
I'm very good. I'm very good. So, yeah, and how are you?
I'm great, so thanks.
Oh, I lost your audio.
So,
No, you're back. Yeah.
I thought to tell about the work that you're doing to my audience.
Yes, sure. Sorry, I missed a little bit. You dropped away for about 15 seconds. I didn't hear you.
So, I thought to tell about the work that you're doing to my audience who are following my YouTube channel, podcast, and my social media.
That works. Perfect.
So, can you please introduce yourself and about the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. My name is Remco Timmermans. I am a Dutch national. Live in the UK, and I have a company called SpaceSide, which is based in Estonia. And in this company, which is just my company, just me, it's my own business. I am a online marketeer and social media specialist, focusing 100% on the space industry. As hopefully you can see behind me, I'm a bit of a space geek, and I've been working in the space industry for the last 10, 15 years. Now, working in the space industry doesn't mean that I work in space. I'm not an astronaut. I know lots of astronauts, but I'm not one myself. But there is much more in space than just astronauts, and I hope we'll have some opportunity to talk about this.
So, you're from UK.
I live in the UK, but I have a Dutch passport, so I'm a Dutch national.
So, I can see you're doing a lot of work in space side. What is it?
Well, my work in space side, as I said, I'm an online marketeer and a social media specialist. What that means is that I basically promote what's happening in the space sector. So I try to help companies that work in the space industry to promote themselves. So I have a marketing background, I have a management and business background, but focusing mostly on marketing and online marketing, social media marketing, and I use those tools to help space organizations promote their work or promote space in general. Because what I see is that lots of people out there do not have a realistic image of what the space industry is, and I try to help the industry to make sure that people understand what's going on. That people understand all the changes that are happening in the space industry, and the space industry is developing very fast at this moment, with many more opportunities for people to join, but also to tell the real story of space, because people still have a very old-fashioned idea of what the space industry means, and of course through the media that focus very much on all the cool stuff that is happening in space. That doesn't mean that is the real picture of what's going on, and my company helps organizations do their marketing. The space sector traditionally is very technological, so engineers, scientists, and not so many marketeers. And it is my role to help these organizations tell their story, to market themselves, and let the world know what's really going on.
Uh, can you tell the recent work that you did?
Well, the reason why I do this is because I'm a big space geek. I mean, you can see behind me, I have rocket models. There's one here. Um, but I always thought when I was your age, when I was in university, which is unfortunately a little while ago, I had the wrong impression of what the space industry was. I was always very interested in aviation and in mainly in space, and I thought, okay, I can go to university to study aerospace engineering, and I went there and I was completely demotivated. That was not what I wanted. That was so much technology, so much math, so much physics, and I'm not good at maths. So I thought, okay, I gave up on my dream because of that. And it was only much later, I'd say almost 20 years later, that I met people working in the space industry, who had various backgrounds, who were not aeronautical engineers or aerospace engineers, who were not astronauts, but they did work in space companies. That convinced me that you don't have to be an engineer or a scientist to work in space. So at that point, I worked in finance and business. very interesting industry, not. Banking and insurance, it's not very interesting, at least not for me. So I went back to school. I went to an institute called the International Space University, now 10 years ago. I did a summer school, and that kind of changed my view on what the space industry really is. And the space industry needs people from any background. That's really the story. That's really the key message that I want to give you and everybody who's watching this YouTube video, is there is a place in space for you. Even if you're not an engineer, even if you're not good at maths, if you're good in other stuff, the space industry, like any industry really, needs people from all backgrounds. And that includes my background. I'm a marketeer. I do marketing. And space companies need marketing professionals. So that's how, in a very short story, I end up in space. I ended up in social media in space. I'm kind of an influencer in the space sector on social media. If you follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle Timmermans R. Maybe you can put it in here somewhere. People can follow me on Twitter, where I talk about space all the time. I have a big passion for social media as well. Is how social media brings people together. I mean, you and I are now talking here because of social media, because we found each other on Twitter, and now we're talking to each other, and that is an extremely powerful thing. I mean, you're in Hyderabad, I'm in Oxford, worlds apart, literally, yet we found each other. And that is what social media does nowadays. There's so much negativity about social media, but social media, in essence, is an extremely powerful channel, powerful method to bring people with similar interests together, just like we are talking here now. And I'm addressing an audience probably mostly in India with this message. And that is something that is not possible without social media. And I got involved with social media early on in 2005, 2006, when I worked at this company called Hewlett Packard. You probably know about them. They make printers and laptops and a lot more. And I worked for them, a very big company. We started to experiment with tools. There were 130,000 people working in Hewlett Packard at that time. I don't know how many now, but many all over the world. And I actually worked with lots of people in our offices in Bangalore, in India. And we experimented with tools on how to communicate internally in an efficient way, without having to pick up the phone or write an email every time. So we started to use messenger tools within the company, and soon those tools became applicable or available publicly. Tools like Facebook Messenger and later Twitter and WhatsApp and well, you name all the social media tools that people are using. And it kind of changed the way that people talk to each other and people meet each other. And that's how I met people from the space industry, was through social media, mostly through Twitter. Twitter is an extremely powerful tool in space. Tip number one, if you want to work in space, get yourself a Twitter account and start following some of these people, because the space industry is very present on Twitter. Reason being is that the space industry is extremely global in nature. So my work in my company is global. I'm based in Oxford, but most of my clients are based all over the world, and I travel a lot to see them. So again, if you like travel, the space industry might be something for you.
Can you put your rocket little closer to you so that
Sure. Well, there's one right above my head as well, but yes. There's one hiding behind my head too.
Yeah, people can see it. So yesterday I interviewed a person who is from NASA, and who is 40 years old. I mean, who worked in television, who worked as a television engineer for 42 years, and who worked in NASA for 13 years. Who is a NASA veteran. So he also told a lot, and after that I got opportunity to interview you. This is a very big opportunity because, like you said, not many people know how to get into space industry, how to work. You know, they like you said, you said different backgrounds, people with different educational backgrounds also come. So not many people are aware of it. So
No.
what SpaceSide? What exactly it will do?
Well, SpaceSide is a marketing agency. You can look it up. It's the website is spaceside.eu. It's a very simple website because the whole company is me. okay, this is my company. I do marketing campaigns and social media and online campaigns for space companies and space organizations. Whoever wants to do business with me, whoever thinks they can benefit from having a professional marketeer doing marketing. So that's really what SpaceSide does in that regard. It's very small, but it is a way. In that sense, it's a good example of how you can get involved in the space industry. You don't have to work for NASA, especially if you come from a country like India, where it's not so easy to find a job at NASA. NASA being in the wrong country. Where I know ISRO in India is well, the Indian Space Organization is very difficult to get into because it's relatively small and many people want to work there. But there are other ways, and my way to do it, I don't work for NASA, I don't work for the European Space Agency, I don't even work for the UK Space Agency. I work for myself, and that is my way to get involved in the space industry, is start my own space company. I mean, I went to in the beginning I didn't know anything really about space. I was a space enthusiast. I read books about space. I knew the stories of Apollo and stories of the moon landings and the space shuttle and this stuff, but I really didn't understand the space industry. So after I went to the International Space University for a 9-week summer course, I thought I did understand a little bit, and it gave me the confidence to work with all these space people. And the way for me to get involved was start my own company. So you can try to find a job as a marketeer at a space company, but you can also just, if you know about marketing, like in my case, I studied marketing in university, so I knew that already. I knew the space industry. I started my own company. I started to find clients who wanted to hire me for a few hours per week, a few hours per month, and try to build this client base so that I can make a viable business. And nowadays, especially nowadays, with after the pandemic, everything going online and people getting used to doing this online, I work for clients outside the United Kingdom. Only very few of my clients are here in the UK. Most of my clients are in other countries. And being an online marketeer, it doesn't really matter where I am. I'm based in Oxford. There's a few space companies here, but not so many. So most of them are outside the country, and that's fine because I can do my business online, and I can do it from here, from Oxford, but I could do it from India as well. I could do it from anywhere in the world, really, as long as we have a bit of a stable internet connection. And that is important to realize, that you don't have to go to America to work for NASA, which is extremely difficult, especially if you're not American. I could not work for NASA because I don't have an American passport, but you don't have to. And that's really important to realize, that even if you are from a country that has not have the big established space program like the Americans do, or like some of the Europeans do, or like the Russians and the Chinese do, that doesn't mean that there's no chances. If you want to be an astronaut, that's extremely difficult, but I never wanted to be an astronaut. And for every astronaut, there's 10,000 people behind the scenes who make sure that that one astronaut can go to space. But as I said before, space is so much more than just astronauts. And I can show you an example. Ooh, I'm going to disappear for a second. Just to grab, for example, this book. This is a great way to start understanding. It's not my book, so I'm not promoting my own work here. It's a book written by someone else, Robert Jacobson. It's called Space is Open for Business. It's a new book, but this tells the story of what the space business is, but also what the opportunities for people like yourself who are studying in university now, where the opportunities in space really lie. This talks about commercial space, about opportunities with CubeSat, about opportunities with space data. It's about how to get involved in what we call new space. So new space being commercial space, the commercial space sector, which is not linked to NASA or official formal national space agencies, but it talks about the opportunities that you have as a student, as an entrepreneur, as one person, no matter where in the world. And that is really an important message, is that the space industry is no longer just NASA and just ESA. It is open to everyone. And that's literally what the book says. Space is open for business, meaning it's open to anyone who wants to be involved.
So what space industry do? What will be the projects?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that is where everybody has a very wrong idea. Many people see what you see on the television and what you read in the newspaper is about mostly about astronauts, about missions to the International Space Station, missions to the moon, future missions to Mars, or you see the Mars rover driving around on Mars, and that is the space industry. But that's only a very small part of it. The biggest part of the space industry is really what you see in your own home every day. You watch television. Everybody watches television. The biggest market in space at the moment is telecommunication through communication satellites, television signals. Television is what made the space industry big. People with these satellite dishes pointing to satellites that nobody can see in geostationary orbit, 35,000 kilometers away from Earth, that hang above a point over the equator, that make sure that you can watch television from all over the world. That is space. Your mobile phone, you use satellite navigation apps on your phone. Everybody uses them. That is space. There's dozens of navigation satellites, GPS, Galileo, Beidou, GLONASS, all these different systems from different countries that make sure that you know exactly where on the planet you are with your phone, and it allows you to navigate with your car or walking around cities, that you know exactly where you are. That is what space is. Earth observation satellites. There's dozens of Earth observation satellites that basically take pictures of every place on Earth every second and send it back and allow us to see exactly what's going on the planet. And there's lots of applications for cities, for farmers, for shipping, for aviation, for anything really, where you need information about what's going on the planet every minute, every hour of the day, to track things like climate change, like weather, like all that stuff. That is what space really is, and that is what over 90% of the space market actually is. It's about data that you get from satellites, and only a very, very small portion is people going to the International Space Station and future missions to Mars and all that good stuff. I mean, if you look, for example, at a company like SpaceX, everybody thinks SpaceX is super cool, and I guess they are. But what most people don't know is that SpaceX is now by far the largest launch company in the world. And what they launch is these types of satellites. Starlink by SpaceX are communication satellites. They provide internet all around the world. And that's really where the money is. There's a reason why Elon Musk sends these thousands of satellites in Earth orbit, because that's how he makes his money. It's not by launching these astronauts to the International Space Station. And yes, he makes money through that, but most of his money comes from launching his own, or preferably other people's satellites. And he does that almost on a weekly basis at the moment, launching other people's satellites into orbit for telecommunication, for satellite navigation, for Earth observation, for weather forecasting, for all those different applications. And that is where the space industry is nowadays, and that is where the money is, and that is where you can really make a difference.
So what is the International Space Station, and where it is? And I can see in Antarctica also.
Well, it's right behind me. It's there. It's in my it's in my cupboard there. Now, where's the International Space Station? The International Space Station is the biggest flying laboratory in the world. It was built at the beginning of this millennium. The first module went up, was it in 98 or 99? And it was finished in 2011. So it took them 12 years to build all these components. And it is in what we call a low Earth orbit. So it flies relatively low over the Earth. You can see it with your own eyes, without binoculars, without a telescope. You can see it during the night. It is, after the moon, it is the second most bright object in the night sky, or in the evening and morning sky. When it's still in sunlight, while you're in the darkness, you can see it fly over. It takes about 8 minutes to go from horizon to horizon. It flies very fast. Many people think it's a plane. Well, many people think it's a UFO. But many people think it is an airplane, but in reality, it's the International Space Station that you can see fly over at some points. It's very big. It's the size of a football field. It's operated by, let me get this right, 27 or 28 different countries that built it and that now operate it, including European countries, the United States and Russia. Those are the biggest contributors, and Japan. And it has different laboratories. And it is used for all kinds of research experiments where microgravity, so zero-G weightlessness, if you like, is required to see how the human body responds to being in weightlessness for a long time, but also plants, other animals, materials, chemistry, biology. How all these things work in space, how we can use the space environment to make particular things better. There's certain enzymes, for example, that are used for medicine that are much easier to make under weightlessness in microgravity than to make on Earth. There are certain materials like glass fiber that is much more efficient and much higher quality when you make it in space rather than make it under gravity conditions. So the ISS, the International Space Station, basically is a big international laboratory to test out all these things. It's crewed by Americans, Europeans, Japanese, Russians, mostly, and sometimes guests from other places like the United Arab Emirates recently sent people there. They're now allowing commercial crews. Right at the moment, there are 4 people sent by a company called Axiom, which is a commercial space company on board of the ISS. But the whole reason for the International Space Station is to experiment and really prepare the next big step, which is bringing people into space for much longer durations, flying to the moon, flying to Mars, which is all going to happen in the next 20 to 50 years.
So, what is space technology and how to work in it?
Well, that's a very generic question, but a very good question. Space technology really is the enabler for all of this. So the technology that we developed, which is in launchers like these two, which is in space station components, but which is mostly what you don't see here, or maybe you see it here, right there, is in satellites. And there's a lot of technology involved to bring anything into space. People always see the rockets, but the rockets is only a very small part of it. And if you look at the space market in size, the launcher industry, as we call it, is tiny compared to the rest of the industry. But it's really the technology that we need to bring materials, satellites, and of course people into space in a safe and efficient and environmentally friendly way. And space technology has evolved quite significantly over the last decades. So just to mention an example, the Apollo missions to the moon, Apollo 11 in 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, the flight computer they had on board of the lunar lander had a computer which was about 1,000 times less powerful than the computer that I'm holding in my hand right here. So the technology that they had back then, where they did these crazy things like going to the moon and landing there, was an amazing achievement compared to today. But like my iPhone now has a better computer than the moon lander had, is an example of how technology has progressed and how modern satellites are so much more powerful than satellites, say 20, 30 years ago, where satellites used to be the size of my room. Now satellites are the size of this. I mean, this is not a satellite, obviously. This is just a plastic box. But satellites nowadays are this size. They're called CubeSats. And CubeSats can be developed fairly easily by people like yourself in universities. If you understand a little bit of technology, you can build CubeSats. And the nice thing about CubeSats is that it's a standardized format. So as long as you stick to the CubeSat standard, which means you put everything that you want to put into the satellite in a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter block, square, then it can be launched, because all the modern systems are adapted to launching this CubeSat standard. So if you can fold it such that it fits in that block, or maybe two of those blocks, or three, you call it 1U, 2U, 3U satellites. But if you try to keep it in a 1U, in the smallest of blocks, 1 liter, then you can launch it, and you can launch it fairly cheaply. You can go to a launch broker, as we call them, organization that will find you a rocket to launch your satellite on. So if you can develop this satellite using this standard in your university, for example, you can launch it and operate your satellite. And there's many universities that have done that, and not in the last place in India, which is a large powerhouse of developing new technology. So you don't have to work for NASA. Again, going back to the core message here, you don't have to work for NASA to work in the space industry. You can build your CubeSat, and if you find a little bit of funding, I mean, it's still not super cheap, but if you can find like $10,000, you can launch your CubeSat into space and operate it from the ground as a real spacecraft. And that was not possible like 5 to 10 years ago.
So I'm into information technology industry. So what is the relation between information technology industry and space industry? Before giving answer for that, can you put your rocket near to you so that
Oh, sorry.
get inspired watching
People
this?
like to see rockets. Yeah, of course. No problem. Sorry, I needed the box that it's standing on to show you. So the link between information technology and space. Well, that link is everything. Everything space is information technology. I wouldn't say the other way around, but the development of space technology is one-to-one related to the development in information technology, both on the hardware side, but also on the software side. What we now see as one of the newest inventions is called satellite as a service, meaning that a satellite, it can be a small CubeSat satellite, has different components on board that can be reprogrammed depending on the application. So it can be an internet relay, it can be an Internet of Things type connection, but it can also be a relay for other types of radio signals. And these modern satellites that have this flexible technology on board, they can be reprogrammed while they're in orbit. Obviously, after you've launched a satellite, and that is still the case, you can't really, when it's broken, you can't really go up there and fix it. That's not realistic. They did that for the Hubble Space Telescope, but those projects to fix the Hubble Space Telescope, they literally cost billions. And if you send a $10,000 CubeSat into space and it doesn't work, well, hey, tough luck. You can't spend $1 billion on trying to go there and repair it. No, you usually just build another one and find some money to launch that. But what these satellite as a service, these reprogrammable satellites offer, is they have different instruments on board that can be used depending on the software that runs on it, depending on the application, and depending on the client. And that client for that satellite service can be more than one. It can be an IoT company and an internet provider, and if there's a camera on board, an Earth observation company. You can use it for multiple purposes, and after it's been used, you can reprogram it for different use, and that makes these satellites extremely versatile, and makes access to these satellites again a factor cheaper. But this completely depends. It's just one of many examples of how information technology interacts with space. I mean, the onboard computer of the Apollo lander, compared to my phone here, is another example how information technology has increased, but everything is driven using information technology and software. It's very simple. So actually, it's good that you asked it, because one of the most sought after jobs in satellite companies at the moment are software engineers. So if you're a good software engineer, generically trained, if you can program in Python, in C++, or whatever modern programming language, you can find a job in space, because that is one of the most sought after skills. Software developing for satellites is that is where the market is, that's where the money is, and that is where the demand is. So I would say, especially for IT specialists, there are good opportunities in the space sector at the moment.
So, as a software engineer, I understood the information transfer between computers and which are there on this planet, and how the information transfer is happening, and what are the mediums that we are using in order to send the information. And I studied AWS, Amazon Web Services, where we use different kind of services, where Amazon Web Services have different, data centers in different parts of the world. So can we able to put data center on space in space?
Yes, absolutely. And Amazon Web Services, AWS, is actually, it has a special division called AWS Groundstation that specializes in connecting satellites and connecting them to the ground, and connecting those ground stations to places where the data is needed. So they have data processing facilities, but also their own ground stations. And the way to link these ground stations. So Amazon is one of the key players in that very market at the moment. So if you're an AWS specialist, Google AWS ground station, and you'll find that Amazon is one of the big players at the moment in ground station and data relay from satellites, both on the space to ground, but also the ground to ground and data processing areas. And Amazon, because it is so powerful and has so many data centers, is a very powerful and big player in the space data management and space data processing industry.
So how many countries are participating in this space study?
You mean in general, or what do you mean by space studies? Because in space studies, really, most countries are involved there. I don't know of any countries that are not involved in some way in space. I mean, I was what was it, 2-3 years ago? I was at an event on the tiny island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, and Mauritius just launched their first satellite. It's a small CubeSat developed by the local university, but even a tiny island state like Mauritius has a space program. So there are very few countries in the world that are not involved in one way or another in space. That doesn't mean they have their own satellites or they launch their own rockets. You don't have to do that. But they are involved. Well, all countries use space data, for example. All countries use satellite communication. All countries use satellite navigation. So in that sense, there are no countries who are not using it. How many countries are developing that technology? Obviously, that's a little bit less. But still, there are no limits or no borders really as to where this technology can be developed at the moment.
So coming to career side, so how to work in space?
Yep, that's a very good question. I get that question a lot. And first of all, it is understanding what you can do in space. I mean, every little kid wants to be an astronaut, right? When I was 6 or 7, I wanted to be an astronaut. But reality says that there's still less than 600 people in the world, in all of human history, that have flown to space. You can say that's a lot, but really it isn't. And that number is increasing faster and faster. But that may not be a realistic perspective for everyone. Of course, the opportunities are there, but the chances of you flying to space in your lifetime, I can't say, because in 20, 30 years that might be different. But at the moment, if you're graduating, or if you're about to graduate from university right now, yes, you can apply for astronaut, but that chances are very small. But there's much more than that. And as I said before, there's a place in space for everyone. So what you should do is get involved in space, in space clubs and space organizations as early as possible. So, for example, for students in many countries, I know in India that exists, is a student organization called SEDS, SEDS. That stands for Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. It's a national, actually an international, because they exist in the US, they exist in Canada, they exist in the United Kingdom, and they exist in India. It's a student organization for any student interested in space. They organize conferences and meetups and working groups where you can get involved, where you can meet people from the space industry, and where you can work on space technology, where you can work on space policies, and you can discuss all these things. So look up that student organization. Once you are beyond the student phase, you can become a member of the SGAC, the Space Generation Advisory Council. It's a large organization of young professionals, starting from the age of 18 up until the age of 35. You can become a member for free. Look up spacegeneration.org. And get involved in their activities. And they have activities in most countries in the world, either virtual or live. In India, I know they organize live events where you can meet both people from the industry and people interested in the industry. Then at individual university level, and I know India is very active there are clubs, student clubs, university clubs, that either build model rockets. Model rocketry is a great way to get involved in launcher technology, but also that builds, for example, Mars rovers. If you talk about robotics, information technology, there are many rover challenges, competitions around the world. I'm actually involved in the European Rover Challenge, which sounds European, but is really global, open to any university or any other robot teams in the world, where you basically build a Mars rover that you send to the competition, and it has to perform certain tasks individually. That's a great way for students to get involved in robotic technology that will help us explore other worlds. NASA announced a mission to Uranus yesterday, to one of these far outlying planets, which has the whole astronomy world super excited at the moment. And I mentioned the word astronomy is also a great way to get involved. Put a telescope on your balcony, in your back garden, the place where you are right now. You can see the sky behind you. That's all you need. Put a telescope up there, wait until it gets dark, and look what you can see. And it's pretty amazing. It's a bit cloudy right now. Clouds kind of ruin it, but there are many days without clouds, I'm sure, where you can see amazing stuff. And that's a great way to improve your knowledge and find what's out there while you're still in university, and get involved with people who are like-minded, and join one of these clubs. Be active, meet people, find mentors, be online, join social media channels that talk about space. Twitter is a good one, but on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, you find people who promote space everywhere. Follow these people, see what they're talking about, see what they're doing, get in touch with them. Space industry is very friendly. I mean, it sounds like we're all a bunch of rocket scientists, but we're really friendly people that, I mean, you reached out to me. We're nice people. We're very welcoming, and we want people to learn from us and really become the next space generation, if you like. Watch the Netflix documentary, The Mars Generation. I think it's still running on Netflix. Have a look at that. That is about people who have a passion for space and who do anything during their time in university to prepare themselves for this career in space. And being a member of SEDS, being a member of the Space Generation Advisory Council, being a member of a rocketry or a Mars rover club, all those things help tremendously, because they help you to meet the right people who can then help you boost your career.
Are we going to be the multiplanetary species like Elon Musk said, and the work that he's doing with SpaceX?
I'd say yes, and I kind of like to think that I understand these things a little bit. Yes, we will. Whether it will be the time frames that some people have in mind, will it be in the 2030s or the 2040s? Maybe not, but there's a lot of progress being made at the moment. So I'd say if we're able to keep up the good work, if we're able to keep these silly wars like what Russia is doing at the moment, if we can limit that as much as possible, if we can find peace on Earth, then we can really focus on becoming the multiplanetary society that many of us have in mind. And you know, that's the really long-term ideal, if you like, the really long-term idea as well behind space, is that if we want to survive as human species or as the population here on this one planet, we have no choice, because our planet has limited time. I mean, it still has a few billion years, so we should be okay. But if we want to survive as a species, then we have no choice but going out there and finding other worlds, starting with the moon and Mars and some of the other places in our own solar system, but ultimately traveling to far away other star systems, other galaxies perhaps, exactly like what Elon Musk is preparing us for by paving the way to go to Mars. And I think, as an example, that is brilliant. Is it realistic to do that in the 2030s? Maybe. Elon Musk has surprised us before, but we'll see.
So at last, what do you say about SpaceSide to my audience?
About space science? Yeah.
SpaceSide.
Oh, SpaceSide. Oh, my own company. Well, use it as an example. What I'd like you to learn from my example, where I created my own place in space, is, as I said before, there is a place in space really for everyone, including you. And for me, creating SpaceSide and establishing my own company in this very small niche of online marketing and social media for space is my way to find a place in the space industry. And I get to work with the coolest people in the world. Owners of space companies, satellite operators, people at space agencies, many astronauts. I have met dozens of astronauts and cosmonauts in my career over the last 10 years. It is a really small world, but it's super exciting. It's super friendly, and really, if you want to work in space, if you have a passion for the space industry, no matter where you are on the planet, no matter your background, there is a place in space for you. And I'm always happy to talk to people to help them find their way, is looking at your specific educational background. What could your place in space be? But the key thing is become active, make sure everybody knows your aspirations and your ambitions, talk to loads of people, and join these clubs, join others with a similar passion, and together you can come very, very far.
So at last, what do you say about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
About your YouTube channel, I think it's brilliant what you're doing, because you're really helping your fellow students and people who watch the YouTube channel to open their eyes to the many different careers that are out there. I think it's absolutely brilliant the way you talk to, well, normal people in all these different industries, being role models and being examples for what you as a student can achieve. And I think it's brilliant because you have to see what other people are doing and how they have reached the position that they have reached, to maybe use as an example. The more examples you see, the more realistic your own dreams become. So I would encourage everyone to watch the videos, of course, but also to get in touch with these people and ask them if they want to be their mentor, or if they can help them find people who can help them progress in their career. I have helped quite a few students over my career now to again find their place in space.
So I'm exploring minds of people, human beings who are living on this planet. So exploring space and exploring human beings' minds. So what is the common thing that you're observing?
Well, I think that's brilliant. That's exactly what you want to do, exploring minds, because that tells us what the possibilities are. And by exploring the minds of many people, everybody is unique. Everybody has a unique story. Everybody has an interesting story, and everybody is an interesting example. People learn by making mistakes and improving every time in their career. And there's a tremendous amount you can learn from these people just by picking their brains, exactly as you say, is to let them speak their minds and let them explain their story. is you can only learn from that. Maybe avoiding some of the mistakes, following up on some of the tips, and I think it's brilliant. So no, absolutely keep up the good work.
I'll put your web link on the screen. People who finds our video on YouTube can see it. Can you spell your website to my podcast audience?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is called SpaceSide.eu, SpaceSide SPACE side SIDE.eu, the European Union, and you will be able to find it.
So thank you, Remco, for your valuable time and giving answers to my questions, and at the same time telling about the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, Sai. It was an honor.
So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Absolutely, yes, of course. That's what it's for. So yes, please do.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
You have my permission.
So thank you, Ramco. Keep doing the great work and explore and help.
Will do, and we'll stay in touch. I'll as soon as you put the links on Twitter and on YouTube, I will help you promote it a little bit.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.